We are going to be talking today about all the functionality here on the dashboard, um, particularly the control panel and management review. So this whole section or area. What the purpose of the dashboard tools are is to encourage you to use and manage with processes. So the using of the processes is a theme that we've been touching on every week. And it's really essential, clearly, because if you don't use them, if your employees don't use them, then they just sit here in TouchStone. And everyone who's ever documented a process and tried to implement it in their business understands this simple fact that if I train someone in how to run a process or use it, and then I never talk about it, never follow up with it, never review it, never discuss it, it just goes away. So the idea is that the discussing of the processes, the continued analysis of them, the intention of managers to be using them and innovating them is really the only way that they stay alive in your business. The added benefit of keeping them alive is that you continue to get all the results that you can achieve when your business is process dependent. So these dashboard features are specifically designed with this in mind. They are built with the intention of allowing employees to access and use their processes, and then more importantly, allowing managers through here to view the fact that their employees are using the processes, to give them tools to reinforce training, to give them tools to reinforce the use of them through assignment, the tools to reinforce the innovation of all those processes through discussions with employees. So if you just use a little bit of what goes on here in the dashboard, you'll see a huge benefit from it. If you dive deep and start using most of it, then there's no way that processes will go unnoticed. There's no way that you'll stop using them and that your employees will stop caring about them. So we're going to talk first about the control panel here, and then I'll get into management review. And I'm going to first talk about just the basic functionality in the control panel. And then we'll get into some strategies on using it, how and when and why it's used. So first of all, if you don't see a control panel header here in this section, if you don't see your position title there, then it hasn't been set up yet. If you don't see this section and you're a manager, well, then again, it hasn't been set up yet. So even if you're brand new to TouchStone and you've only documented a few processes, I'd suggest that you come over here to account administration and right away add all of your employees. If you've had TouchStone for a while and you haven't added your employees yet, do it. That's the first step in allowing people to be in it and actually learning how to use it. So add them and then go here to this control panel icon and then choose the position that user, that employee fills, and give them a control panel for it. All of this is stuff that we discussed last week. If you're a manager and you go to the dashboard and you don't see any of your employees in the management review section, that's because they haven't been set up in account administration and assigned positions underneath you. So right here, if I wasn't seeing all my employees here, the sole reason that is because nobody has gone here to account administration and set up Jack here as a user and then assigned him this bookkeeper role. As soon as that's done, and as long as I have a control panel for the manager above, then I'm going to see all my positions and employees listed here below. So let's click this control panel. So the first thing you see here are groups that I've created. So that's what these headers are. The groups then help you to organize the processes. So let's go to a user that hasn't been set up yet. Let's choose this person. When you haven't created any groups, this is what it looks like. You'll see a section here called default list. And when I click the default list, I then see processes listed here. If you see your control panels this way, All you have to do is click the default list to see the processes that are there in this control panel, and then go here and create groups. So if anybody who clicks on either a subordinate position down here in management review or their own position, if you see that default list button appear, then I would say right away go in and create groups and start organizing your processes into groups. If I'm an employee and I go here and I click and I just see default list and public, I'm going to think like, what is this? And if I click the default list and I see my processes, and usually this one only has 3 in it, but usually there'd be 10 or 15 processes here. The first reaction is, this is overwhelming. I don't even know what all this is. What do I do? If you organize it into groups, though, then it starts to look familiar to the employee. And the more organized it is, the easier it is for them to find things and know how to use them. I'm going to go back. All the processes listed in these groups here, or in your default list, all come from this position on the organization chart. So every process that is added to this box here on the org chart shows up in the control panel. So every single process listed in any box on the org chart, if you get assigned a control panel for that position or that role, you'll then see every process on this job description or process list, whatever you want to call it. If I remove a process from this position, I go here and hit remove and take it off, it removes it from the control panel automatically. If I go and add a position right here or right here, it adds that position automatically to this role control panel. So this list that we're seeing here is derived from that box on the org chart and is an exact mirror of that box on the org chart. Therefore, if you see any processes that are missing when you get here to the control panel list, all you have to do is go to the role on the org chart and add the processes that are missing. If you see processes over here in this control panel that shouldn't be here, all you have to do is go back to the org chart to that position and remove them. So the first thing I want to talk about here is the groups, because I think this is just so important. I think it's a good idea to have employees log in and create their own groups and organize their own processes. So here, I can go in and do my own through my own control panel, or the manager could do it through here. So if I click Jack here, you see the create group. Whatever, if I'm his manager and I go into Jack's position and I organize all his processes into groups, then when he logs in, he's going to see those groups. But the opposite is true. If he goes here to his own control panel, he can create his groups and organize his own processes. So we have it both ways, depending on how you want to do it. My suggestion or recommendation would be that you allow Jack to make his own groups. The only exception to that would be maybe for a brand new employee. And we'll talk about a little bit more about that in a few minutes. So if Jack comes here, he's going to click this default list and he'll see all his processes. So this looks like a big, long list of things. But the minute I start to organize it, you'll see it starts to look way different. It looks more familiar. So to create a group, you hit create group, and then you put in the name of that group. Let's call this maybe admin. So this is administrative processes that Jack has. And then I hit save. And then you'll see that group added. If you ever want to see all the groups in the default list expanded, you just click over here. You can also click the title and it opens, or you just hit the expand collapse and it'll open. So you want to sit or recommend to your employees that they create groups by subject area, like admin or management, or accounts payable or paying bills, whatever term is familiar and useful to them. And then they just simply take their processes and they drag them down to that group. So it's just drag and drop, just pulling all these down into this group. And when it collapses, then it starts to look like this with the group showing. The minute you take all the processes and you drag them into groups, this default list goes away. So they're all out of that default list now. And now if I refresh, you'll see default list is no longer there. Another tip is and you can use this with your employees and with your managers, if a new process is added to the bookkeeper role, then that new process will appear again in the default list until it's moved and organized into a group. So if that default list is ever appearing and you're a manager and you haven't got an assignment saying, hey, here's a new process, and you see that default list, you know that there's a new process. And your employees should be trained that if the manager has forgotten to notify them of the new process or assigned it to them, then they should ask about it if they see a process in the default list. So let's go back here. So groups are great by subjects. Like here's a list of subjects. You can have, if the position has a lot of checklists or reports, you could have a process like management checklists or reports. If you have processes that are informational, like they're not rudimentary and they're not done all the time, they're just stuff sometimes you need to know, you can create a group and call it resources. I've seen that before, and I think it looks good. And then you take that group and you drag it down to the bottom because all of these are drag and drop. So I can take the ones that I do the most and kind of move them up here. And I can take the ones that processes or groups that are used the least and drag them down here. So a group called resources is a good idea. I also like this one. This is called on demand. So these are things that you do when you're told to do it, but you don't necessarily do them all the time. It doesn't have to be top of mind. It's just stuff that, when I tell you to do it, you do it. It's great to have documentation for processes like that because I could have got trained in how to do these on-demand processes 2 years ago, and now I'm just having to do it again. So I could look here and be reminded how to do it. If you have a situation where you've got multiple employees filling one role, like here, so customer service, I've got 4 customer service representatives. All these 4 people see the same processes because they're all linked to this role on the org chart. And every process that's on this role is then going to appear in each one of their control panels. When Tom logs in and goes and does something like fills out a checklist or makes a note to me, that's unique to him. Like no one else sees that but him. But aside from that, they're all seeing the same processes. So if you have a situation where maybe Sally's the nighttime customer service agent and Mike's the evening customer service agent, and maybe I have Sally doing things that are a little bit different because she works during the day and Mike works at night. You can also create a group and call it do not use or for night shift only. And then you can put processes into that group. So you can drag it all the way down here to the bottom, and any processes that are only used in certain situations could be listed here. Anybody could go and look at them who fills the customer service role, but I would know that these are used during the night shift or only used by a certain person even. Another way I've seen groups is by timing. So like beginning of the day, middle, end. This works well for technical positions or people who are out in the field doing things. You could even do it by time, like arrive at the shop 6 a.m. First customer's location 8 a.m. Noon, half day, and then maybe 2 and 4. There's some positions or types of employees that have to submit reports throughout the day at different times. So you could lay out the groups according to those times. Admin positions like this one can have groups that represent months of the year or times of the year. So like end of year, beginning of year, the 15th, the 1st. So again, think about what groups are useful. If you have a gazillion employees, let's say you have like 50 or 100 employees, and you have a situation where maybe you're the manager and you have like, I don't know, maybe 10 reporting positions. I think it's really unreasonable and unmanageable if one person is managing more than 10 people. That's just a personal opinion. I think a lot of the work that managers do, I think it breeds profitability and success and happy employees. And if you're trying to manage more than 10 people, you're not doing it well. But let's say you had 10 employees here and you're listening to what I'm saying and thinking, well, if I have to go to all 10 of these people and I have to make all these groups, what a pain that is. Don't do it that way. Assign the employees to do it. So tell Jack, go organize your groups. Tell Tom, go organize your groups. This is making it so you don't have to do it, but it's also getting them into TouchStone, right? It's like showing them this is where you're going to go to find all your processes. Organize them into categories that you like. Or if you want to be very regimented about it, you could say to all four of these people, build them like this and give them 4 categories and say, move your processes in there. If they can't do that, they should learn how to do it. It's really easy. And again, it's giving them, putting their foot in the water a little bit with TouchStone if you haven't taken that step yet. You can edit groups right here, really easy. I just choose edit, choose the group I want to edit, and then type in the new title and hit save. Easy. I can also delete groups. Delete. If I hit the drop down here and I choose a group to delete, I'm not going to do it, but if I did, that group would go away. And then if there were any processes in this group that I'm about to delete, they get thrown back up into the default list. So the default list button would appear again, and then all those processes would move up underneath it. And then you could take them and organize them into other groups. So pretty easy. I showed you these groups drag and drop. They could all move around. I can also take processes within the group and move them up and down and all around. Okay, so next thing is let's talk about functionality within the processes inside of the control panel. So if I choose a process, like this one's that one-on-one meeting process, which those of you who have been here since the beginning have seen me and heard me talk about the importance of this process. If I select this process, now it's opening it in the control panel mode, you might say. So here, I just see what's been documented in this process. I don't see anything else. In addition, I can't edit or change anything here. This has already been documented and completed by someone, and all I'm doing here is using it. So all I'm doing here is looking at the content, studying it for training purposes or for whatever reason. If there's a form in it like there is here, I can complete that form, complete that checklist. So you'll notice the interface is much different here. It's cleaned up, it's concise. You don't see anything extra. You just see what's necessary. If I wanted to go and edit and change this one-on-one meeting process, I would go back here to the 4 functions, and then I would need to go and choose that process from the list here in the 4 key functions. And now I can go in and edit and change this. I can change the work plan, I can add new ones, I could change the form, I could change the title. So the editing of this process happens here through the 4 key functions or through a box on the chart. The using of the process, once it's done, is here. That's the difference. For your read-only users, like nobody who's going to be documenting or changing anything, they're just going to be using it. They don't even see the 4 key functions. When they click the org chart, they'll see the org chart, but all the positions are grayed out except for the ones that they have access to. If they click a box on the chart that they have access to, they'll see all those processes like this. I'll see all these processes listed here, but when I click on them, it doesn't go to this screen here where it's built. If I'm a read-only user, it throws me back to the dashboard, to this process through the dashboard. I think it's good to log in as an employee who's read-only just so you can see what that looks like. And it's nice to see too that how the interface is much simpler and easier to use. When you're an admin user or a create user, there's a little bit more going on, right? Because you're doing more, you're editing and changing things, you're not just using them. So let's go back here. So why would an employee look at these processes here through the dashboard? Why would they need to? First and foremost, for training purposes. Being new employee training and ongoing training. I like to say that training is very simple. it feels overwhelming and complicated, but truly, if you think of it from a process perspective, it's very simple. There is new employee training, brand new person. I'm training them in all their processes, hopefully, if they're documented. And then there's ongoing training. Ongoing training can be monthly, weekly, annually, when necessary, when there's a problem, when someone's not doing something well. All of that is ongoing training. And it's an opportunity to make someone better. So new employee and ongoing training. So let's talk about new employee training. So if I hired a brand new employee, let's go to an example here in management review. Let's go to Jack. So let's say Jack's brand new. I would make sure he's added, of course, to account administration and assigned his role on the org chart, and then his control panel appears. If Jack's new, it's probably safe to say he's not going to be documenting processes, but that's not always the case. Sometimes a new employee can be useful in documenting processes because you're sitting down with them, and if nothing exists, somebody's teaching them something. And normally the person's like whipped out a pen and started making notes while we're talking. So in a sense, they're documenting something while they're being taught it. So if you have a situation where no processes exist, you just hired a new employee, consider having the manager and the employee, or even the senior position that they're shadowing and the employee, go into TouchStone and start to sketch out work plans, as they're doing it. At a minimum, record what's going on. So if it's a computer position or something happening on the computer, you can use Loom or Scribe and be recording what's happening. Get your phone out and record it. I mean, anything to kind of capture the moment. This tribal method of training where we just kind of learn from generation to generation, it's very dysfunctional, and it's also you can't reproduce it in a sense. So maybe use it as an opportunity to get those processes written. Having said that, normally a brand new employee would have read-only access to TouchStone and wouldn't be documenting anything. So the first thing I might do with an employee like Jack is look at all these processes. So this is new employee training. And I might think, okay, how am I going to teach him these things? It's a pretty, I think, a simple concept to consider. How am I going to teach him all 10 of these processes? What should he learn first? What should he learn second? What should go together? What is similar in process that he could learn one and then the other, and it would make more sense. So as the manager, think this through, and it's going to be easier than you've ever done before, because at minimum, you've got a list of processes here. And just one more point about new employee training and processes not being documented. At a minimum, make a list of all the processes. Go to the org chart, go to the position, make a list, and then sit here with the employee with this list and do what I'm about to talk about. That's going to take you 10 or 15 minutes, and it's completely worth doing. At least I have a list for that new employee. So with Jack here, I would say, okay, here's all these processes. I think he's a competent bookkeeper. He's had experience. He has the minimum qualifications. I think he can learn how to do all this in 1 month. Or maybe your situation's much more complicated. It's going to take 6 months. But decide on a time frame that you think is reasonable. So I've got all these processes. I think he can learn all these in a month. So I'd go here and hit create group, and I might call this week 1. So this is a week 1 group, what he's going to learn in week 1. And then I'd go week 2. And then I go week 3. And clearly I'm making this simple for example purposes. Yours may be longer, maybe shorter than this, but the idea is still the same. So now I've got 4 groups here for all 4 weeks of his training. Then I'm going to take the processes here and I'm going to start to think, like, what goes together? What do I want him to learn in week 1? What's easy, maybe? What can he get his feet wet with first before we dive into bigger things in week 2? So let's say I'm going to teach him how to do his key indicators in week 1. maybe how to do financial statement preparation. So I'm taking the processes that I feel like go together and can basically be trained. He could be trained, and or the expectation is I could train him in 5 days how to do each of these processes. Maybe I put the things that are more complicated and difficult at the bottom. Let's do this. Okay. So this one would have been the default list in this example. So I'm just going to delete it for now. All right. So now the default list should be gone. And all Jack will see here is his weeks, 4 weeks, and then public processes. So remember from last week, these public processes are all those processes on the dashboard. These processes he also has to be trained on, but it should be relatively simple. I should be able to assign him each of these and have him go and read them and study them, maybe have a little conversation, but this is informational kind of stuff. But yes, a new employee needs to be trained in these public processes as well. So back up to the 4 weeks. Think about if you're doing this for the first time, check your numbers, make sure it feels accurate to you that these 3 things could conceivably be learned in 1 week. Then what you can also do, which is fun, is now take what you're paying that new bookkeeper plus your overhead and management time and add that all up for a week's worth of time. And then now you're starting to see what it's going to cost you to train this new employee. And that's where it really starts to get interesting and fun. Because if I know what it costs me to hire a new employee and fully train them, those of you who are the owners or the finance people in your business know that that's magic. Like that is the key to everything in a sense. It's the key to scaling. It's the key to making tough decisions. It's the key to what you're wanting to tolerate with an employee. It's a key to who's good and who's not. Most importantly, though, it's a key to evaluate where the new employee is, and if they're successful or not before it's too late. This also goes back to this concept where we talked about on the org chart, where I'm growing my own talent from within. So I'm hiring people here, and then I'm moving them here, and then I'm moving them here. So we talked about this being the track or the growth of an employee. So I hire someone with very little skill set here. They learn all of the processes on this role. Then I move it up here and they learn all the processes on this role. And then they're senior and they learn all the processes on this role. If you do the training week idea, you should know in 4 weeks, the technician would then be here. And so then maybe he's making a little bit more money. And then in another 2 months, he's then here. And then in another 4 months, now he's senior. If I add up all that money, simply put, I can tell you what it's going to cost to bring someone in at an entry level and move them up to here. This solves this issue of the balance between sales and marketing to a certain degree. So what kind of sales do I need to have over here in order to hire enough people here to be delivering those products or services in a profitable way? So all of those things start to come together a little bit more when you consider taking new employees and putting them into a training model like this. Now, is this perfect? No, it's not perfect. You may have guessed wrong. I may have not realized that X, Y, and Z would happen, and so I couldn't train him on all 3. No fault of his own. Is it going to work the same way every time? Not necessarily, but what if it worked 50% of the way? Wouldn't that be better than maybe what's happening now? I think 80% is doing pretty well. Like I plan this out, I hire a good employee, and 80% of the time it works. So now that you have your training groups kind of laid out, I would then go and assign in day 1, maybe assign the process to Jack. So I click the process, and then I go up here to this little assign button. And I'll show you another way to do this from the dashboard. But since you're here making groups, this is a quick way to do it. I hit assign, and I go over here, and I give it a due date. So I want him to learn it in Friday, working on Friday, maybe to Monday. I send him a notification. I make some notes in here of what my expectations are. Do this, do that, then let's meet at noon and discuss it. And then I hit assign. So now Jack has been sent a notification that I've assigned him this budget creation process. And I can look over here to the right and see it in the assignments window. Then I could assign all of the processes in one sitting if I wanted to. If I've got these dates laid out, I could go to the next one and assign that for the next day and this one for the end of the week. And then he would have these 3 assignments sitting here. I could do the whole month if I wanted to, and then he'd have all these assignments stacked up. I think doing it 1 week at a time is probably good, so you don't overwhelm the person with all the assignments right away. So then what happens is Jack gets this email saying, she wants you to learn the budget creation process first. So he's going to take a look at it. He can look at the work plans. He can read it and study it. He could practice building a mock budget if he wanted to. And then you go and create, your training methodology based on the position. Some people are learning in the field, say. So they're actually out with a mentor all day. And then at the end of the day or the beginning of the day, maybe they're reading and studying things in TouchStone. The manager is the teacher, though. That's an important idea. The manager is the teacher. The teaching shouldn't be advocated to another person. The manager ultimately is accountable for the teaching, the training. And traditional training methods really work well. Like when we all learned in school, we sit, we have a textbook, somebody's teaching us, maybe we watch a video, and then we take a test. So think about that, and the processes and the documentation in the processes are really there to help. So this is on new employee training. And the idea is the manager up here is setting up the training for each of these employees, the new employees, and then walking them through it. The manager has to make time. The one-on-one meetings start maybe where we sit and discuss once a week more about how the training's going. Here's another way to assign processes. So what I showed you is we clicked the employee's name and we went in here to a process like this one. And then inside this process, I can assign it. Another way is to do it through the dashboard, which is less clicking. So if I hit the assign button here on the dashboard, and I hit this drop down and I see Jack right here, or I could choose a different employee. So I see Jack, and then I hit a drop down here, and I'm seeing all of his processes that are in his control panel on his position on the org chart. So here's all the processes. They're in order of how they're in order in the control panel. So however you've drag and drop them to put them into the order, that's how they appear. And then you see down here the public processes as well. So these need to be assigned in addition to the ones that are just in the control panel. So then I give it the due date, same kind of idea, send a notification or not, notes, and then I hit assign. So the difference is here I can assign right from the face of the dashboard, or I can go in and assign. So here's another point about this. If I'm here and I'm going to assign, and let's say I just want to assign one thing in the process, like one tool, like a checklist or a form. I don't want to assign the whole process. You can go into the process. So let's go to one that I know has more than one. So here's accounts payable. This process has got, see all these work plans in it? So let's say I didn't want to assign the whole process here. I just wanted to assign the invoicing. I would go right across here and hit the assignment icon here. So I'll go back and do it again. So I'm going to the process and I want to assign just the invoicing work plan in here, not the whole process. So I hit this process, drop down to see all the invoices or all of the work plans. And then I go all the way to the right here and I click this icon that says assign, and then I go through the assignment process. The difference is that when Jack gets the notification about the assignment, so let's go back here and I'll show you from this point. So here I've assigned the whole process, but here I've just assigned this invoice work plan instead of the whole process. So when Jack logs in and he clicks his assignment, he's going to go right here to the invoices work plan and finish that, as opposed to being assigned everything in the process. So all the work plans, all the checklists, all the forms. When you're here in this assignments area and management review, if I want to edit the assignment, I just hit this little edit pencil and then it opens. I can delete it all together down here if I want to get rid of it. I could change the due date. I can edit my notes. So anything that a manager has done in an assignment you've made, you're always going to see it until it's completed. You're going to see it here in the assignments section to the right, and you can always go and edit it. When an employee completes an assignment, you'll get a notification, the manager will, and then this assignment will drop down to this area called completed. So why would you assign something? Why would you go through this and assign a process? Well, if we go back to the idea of training, which is the purpose of this dashboard functionality, new employee training, ongoing training. For new employee training, you might assign so that the employee is staying on track with the processes you're wanting to teach them. You know, we could sit together for a whole month, Jack and I here, and I could literally walk him through and say, okay, let's focus on budgeting first. Why don't you read and study in TouchStone, and then I'll come back in an hour and we'll do this and this. There could be that level of hand-holding with the training. Or the better your process is, the easier the training is. Or I could assign them all to Jack, or assign him the first 3 and say, hey, you go through and do these assignments, and then we'll talk in 2 days. So new employee training, a good reason for assigning something. And then ongoing training. So different ideas about ongoing training and assignment. If an employee is not doing something correctly. So I get a call from the customer saying, you know, that I had this complaint and nobody helped me and blah, blah, blah. I could run a report over here and see if the form had been filled out for that employee's complaint. And then let's say Tom here did fill it out, but he missed something. I could go to him here in customer service, and I could go directly to the customer complaint process, which is somewhere in here. And then I could assign the process to him. So I hit customer complaints. And then let's say I know that he made a mistake in the very first work plan here. So I could go and assign this work plan to him and put a note down here saying, hey, X, Y, and Z customer called me and this happened. So would you review this and then make notes to me about where you think it went wrong? So he gets the assignment, he goes in and does what I requested, he completes it, he puts in the notes, and then I go and review it. Or I could say to myself, he needs to go over this whole process again thoroughly. So I would assign him the whole process, either right here or from the face of the dashboard. The value of that is that I'm training him, I'm giving him more training on this process, and it opens up the door for us to communicate about it. I'm not calling him up on the phone and saying, hey, you blew it again, you always do this, you know, you're such a jerk. Or I'm not going to another employee and saying, you know, Tom blew this and he should have done it this way and that way, and I've told him a million times. Remember the inner directed, outer directed? I'm not doing that. I'm making it process directed. I'm saying something's not right with the process here. Either you're not following it the way it's laid out, or we're missing something. Maybe there's something off with it. Looking at processes this way just opens the door for innovation, because it isn't always the employee's fault. You know, sometimes the process is wrong. You know, sometimes it doesn't have enough detail. Sometimes the manager didn't go over it in enough detail. Sometimes things change. If something changes, you have to stop and update the process, right? If you don't, then people will do it wrong. And then slowly over time, that process is outdated and goes away completely. So this is Another reason using processes through the dashboard really keeps people focused on innovating processes that maybe have changed. So that's one reason, that one way that assignments could be used with employees is ongoing training if there's problems. I may use assignment if I want one of these employees to document a process or to innovate it, to make it better. So I could go, if the bookkeeper's been around for a long time, or the customer service person's been around, maybe he's my best customer service person, and I know that there are issues with the complaint process, or through having issues and frustrations, I've noticed that we're getting a lot of really bad online reviews. And I really need somebody to document a process for how to scope out our reputation monthly on the internet, and then go to these sites and put responses in for things. I could go here to the org chart, and I could go to the customer service role right here, and I can add this process. Let's call it online. So I'm adding it directly to TouchStone. I put it in the right sub-function on the 4 key functions. So let's put it in client service maybe, and then I hit save. Now it's down here. I'd probably go and select it. And I'm breaking my own rules here. This should always be capitalized, first letter of every word, because it's a title. I'd go in and put in the objective. So that's the minimum of what I would have to do. I could go and put in a few work plan titles here if I wanted to shape up the process a little bit for the person I'm asking to document it. But let's say this is all I do, so I'm saving it. Then I go back here to the dashboard. And if you look here, let's say it's Tom's the person that I want to create it. Boom, there's that default list. And here's that process. So this is what I meant by it's going to appear in the default list. I might leave it in the default list until it's been documented, or you could drag it, do the assignment for everyone, and then have them also tell them to make sure that they put it into a group on their dashboard. But either way, I want Tom to document this process. So let's do it this way. I would go to Tom and hit assign, and then I hit the drop down and I choose him, and then I choose the process, and then I give it a due date. Maybe I give him a week. I send him a notification, and then here's where I explain. Please go and document this process. Think about these things while you're doing it. Make a rough draft for me, whatever you want to say here about why you're giving it to him. You're the best at this. I know you can do it. Please and thank you. It's got its due date, and then I hit assign. So now Tom's going to get this notification that I want him to document this process. Also, if you haven't noticed, these little icons appear, letting the employee know that they have an assignment. They'll get an email, but they also know here. When I'm a manager and I log in and I see these little icons, I know right away that my employees haven't, or either they have a current assignment or they haven't completed it yet. There's a second wave of functionality coming to process assignment I think in the next few weeks. It's even that imminent. And one of the key features is going to be these little icons will have stages. So if it's a new assignment, there'll be a certain color, and if it's past due, there'll be a different color. Another thing that's coming is right now, if you assign through the dashboard, you can choose one employee and one process to assign. The second wave of functionality is I'm going to be able to go to a whole group of people in the same position. So Tom, all 4 of these people, I can choose all of them, and then I can go and assign multiple processes to them at one time. And that's kind of useful functionality when for new employee training. It's also useful for public processes down here, because you may go and assign all of these at one time, give it a 2-week due date. So those are all features that are coming soon. Someone's asking about the notifications. Yeah, so the minute you assign something, and you probably saw this already, but right here, you can hit this send email notification. So they'll get an email notification saying who assigned them what's the due date. They click it, they go into TouchStone and complete it, and then the manager gets a notification that it's been finished. Okay. So a few other things in management review that I think are really useful with this idea of a manager managing employees with processes. One thing that you can do, which is satisfying and also verification, is let's go back to this example of new employee training. So here's week 1. Let's say that week 1 is passed and I've trained Jack in all 3 of these processes. Maybe he's taken a test. I've watched him do it. I feel confident as his manager that he's trained in these processes and he knows what to do. I could then go to the processes and flip these little flags called trained. So I'm happy he's trained in these processes. I think he's good to go. And if I go back here, you'll see these green check marks will appear. So all you do is click, hit the little train check mark, go back, and then these check marks appear. It's nice because the employee sees these. So they'll know, that they've passed the test in a sense, or I have vetted them and made it so that they're, trained in the process. And all it is right here. You can also untrain. So if you have an issue with Jack 6 months from now and he's just not getting the key indicator process, or there's more problems happening with it, you could select it and then unmark it. And so when he looks at it, the green check mark's going to be gone. Another thing these train check marks are good for is if I'm the owner of the company here, I can see inside of the control panels of all of these people because I have the top box. So if I know that a new customer service rep got hired or a new bookkeeper got hired in the 3rd quarter, and I'm wondering, did they get trained? Are they being trained? What's the status of their training? I can then go through my own dashboard because I see everyone down here, a list of all the employees. I'm not their direct manager, but because I have the top box, I see. And then all I have to do is click on them, and then I see the green check marks, or I don't. So this is just a way that any up level manager could then look to see, how if the employees are being trained and are they trained without having to go to the manager and check. The check marks are also good if an employee says to you, well, I was never trained in that. Like, no one ever told me that. How could you expect me to do it? I didn't know. So if you get that kind of rhetoric, you could go back and verify, were they trained in it? When were they assigned the process? When was the assignment? I can look at it all here in the completed assignments window. And then again, that's just evidence that maybe you did forget it, or maybe this process was created after they were there, or whatever the situation is, you kind of have something to verify and go back to. Any questions about any of this? You can't currently text, although I have heard this request before. So I think it is on the development list, or at least it's being investigated. I think what he's saying is with this notification that appears here, rather than send email, that you might also have an ability to send a text. But I'll check that out for you, Jim, and see if that is in the works or not. Process assignment is a relatively new feature to TouchStone, and so we're kind of learning about what works and what doesn't work. So if you do have any feedback for this, or any wishes or desires around it, make sure that you tell us that. You can send it to me directly, or you can always go to the resource center here and go to support. And then you can send a contact support message right here. And then we take all that stuff very seriously. And if a preponderance of users want something, then we'll definitely do it because we listen to what you want. Sometimes things are too much. Our part of our mission is to keep TouchStone usable, keep it simple enough that you don't necessarily have to have a college education to learn how to do it. Yet we want to keep it robust enough that there are features in it that truly work and can meet the needs of all of our users. But we're very mindful of making things overcomplicated. And sometimes when you add things because they sound nice, that's just adding another layer to this that someone has to learn. This is a good question. Yeah, I don't think I talked about this in detail, but you can assign the public processes here. So I think I flashed on that, but I'll just do it again. So if I go here, I'm in management review now for Jack again, and I see all the public processes down here. So I could go to a public process like this one, and I could hit assign entire process. And then they would get a notification that this process has been assigned to them. And then the only difference is when that employee logs in, they're going to go to the public process here instead of clicking their control panel and go into it. They're going to go to it here. Okay, so in the few minutes that we have left, I just want to go over these processes again, just real quickly. Numerous people have asked to do this, and I know it's I got feedback that it's academic. That was the word. So I think I totally accept that. Sometimes things are a little overcomplicated, maybe, or not complicated, but just it takes a lot of effort to get it to sink in. So I'm going to go over these just real quickly here again in the minutes that we have left. But I also want to say that at any point in time, if not me, one of us is willing to sit with you one-on-one and go through it with you in your own account, like show you. And I had a couple of requests for that last week for how to use this process solutions for management. And then someone else how to do the strategic planning with your employees using TouchStone. And all we did, it like 10, 15 minutes. It doesn't really take a whole lot of time. But when you sit there and we tell you what to do and you actually do it in your account and you're like, oh, there it is. Like the act of doing it yourself really helps it to sink in. In addition to that, I also love it when a company comes with like a group of managers and you've decided you want your managers to really, embrace this idea of managing processes, or you want your managers to learn all 6 of these and how to do them in TouchStone, or maybe just one, maybe just this one-on-one meeting. Then we'll sit with you with the group together and do a webinar style kind of training of it and have everybody go into their accounts and start to practice it. So that's available also. So I'm start off with just the one-on-one meeting process. So for those of you who are here from the beginning, this one-on-one meeting process is all about using this agenda or whatever agenda you decide to create to have and schedule and perform one-on-one meetings with every employee every week, every month, or every quarter. So if you're hearing this and saying nobody has time to do this every week, fine, do it once a month. If you're saying no way, nobody can do this once a month, I would probably challenge that, but do once a quarter. If you do less than once a quarter, well, then it's a performance review. It's not a one-on-one meeting. I would really kind of run that up the flagpole and die on that hill. It could be once a month. I can't imagine that your managers don't have that much time. And if they don't have enough time to meet with every employee at least once a month for 45 minutes, they're managing way too many people, or they're totally overwhelmed with tactical work and have no time for management. Either scenario is a failure. So if you want this idea of managers managing processes and profitability, you have to give them the time for this. They have to have the time for it. So in this meeting, we basically fill out this agenda form. What are the items that I want to discuss? What are things that happened last week? What are goals for next period? What are any problems or personal issues and any notes? So the manager fills this out. this whole form for their employee and then saves it. And now a copy of this is saved back to TouchStone. So it date and time stamps it and it's saved back to TouchStone. Once it's saved, I can hit this little print button and this creates a PDF that I could then print or download somewhere else if I want to. So every week, the employees are having these meetings, or every month, and the manager's filling out this agenda form. They can sit there with their iPhones or whatever mobile device that they have. It could be on a tailgate, it could be anywhere. And I could go to TouchStone to this form and actually read through the agenda while we're meeting. Once something's saved, like you saw me just save this agenda form, if I go here to the saved area, I see all of them that I've saved over the countless history of me having these one-on-one meetings. It says untitled here when you don't save it as something. So this is one way to get to all of the saved forms that you've done over time. Another way is to search for it in a report. So if I go to reports here, I can run a control panel report or management report, and I can search for an employee's name, and then I can see my agenda forms that I've completed. So getting your managers or yourself to do this in TouchStone, do these one-on-one meetings, it's making it more efficient. I know maybe the act of stepping into it is hard, or you have to give it some thought, but it makes it more trackable, manageable, and efficient. And it's one step closer of this idea of getting your managers to manage with processes. So one-on-one meetings, performance indicators. Performance indicators are great ways of tracking results. So here's an example of a performance indicator form for HR. Down here, I've got like tangible indicators like employee turnover, employee training, employee morale, work environment. These are more intangible. So we do it on a scale of like +10 to -10. So once a month or once a quarter, this one's monthly, the manager would come and fill this out. So they're clicking on it. They could save this as, Q3 if they want to. Remember, when you save it, it date and time stamps it already. And then these fields are, all live to fill out. And then I hit save. And now it's saved back to TouchStone. If I've been assigned this, once I complete it, my manager will get a notification that it's done. Or another thing a manager can do is once a month or once a quarter, go run a report right here and see if the indicators are there when the employees are supposed to have turned them in. If they're not, they could go right to the dashboard and assign it to the manager. So the purpose of these key indicators is to track results, keep people, even frontline employees, moving towards goals and tracking it all with key performance indicators. Task delegation and work management. So this is a methodology for delegating work to your employees. There's some great tools down in here one that I love is called the delegation exercise. This is a step-by-step that you should put all your managers through. If you have anybody working for you that wears multiple hats, is like invaluable to the company, the answer person for everything, just like it would be just impossible thought to think that they would not be there anymore. That person is probably so stressed out and overwhelmed, you don't even know, but they're probably not even saying it because they are committed. They want to be there helping, but they are probably very stressed out and overwhelmed. So this type of exercise for a person like that, and also a manager, definitely owner of a company, is really mind-blowing sometimes. So work that can never be delegated, work that you can delegate after you write a process for it, and work you can delegate right now. Assign this to your managers and have them fill it out and just see how surprised you are by what you get back. The work in this category, that has to be delegated. There's no reason for it. The work, write a process for it and then delegate it. We'll put a plan in place to hit some of those high processes that would really be great if they could get off that person's plate. So this could all be, again, these fields are all live right here. It can all be filled out. And then once it's saved, now this delegation exercise has been saved. And if I assign this to my employee, I could go over here to reports and view this completed form. Then employee performance review. This really goes, and I won't go into this a whole deal because I know we're out of time. This goes along with this one-on-one meetings and performance review. So what happens in our performance review that you'll be able to download from the library if you haven't already is we suggest that you take all the work from the position you're doing the review for. So this is going to be for the admin performance review, the admin position. I, as the manager, go in and fill all this out. And what's happening here is these are the processes that this position is responsible for. Safety and inspections report, productivity reporting, all the processes. So you're reviewing your employees on the very processes that you trained them on and that they learned when they first started working for you. So it makes sense because we're reinforcing the use of those processes and giving an evaluation on them. Then we have this process, solutions for management. So this is also known as the key frustrations process for you Michael Gerber fans. So here's a process solutions form. So here's where we're writing down what the problem is. Is it self? Is it outer? Is it process directed frustration? Rename it or rephrase it into what is the process that you need to work on. So this is a way of getting from frustration or problem to process solution. The best managers in the world know how to do this on the fly because they immediately can see it's not your fault, it's not my fault, it's not his fault or her fault or that department's fault. It's the fault of a missing process. And if we can find out the solution, then we're successful. And then lastly, strategic planning this is for human resources, but basically it's strategic planning for any and every position. So here you've got what your annual priorities are for the year. Process development, I want to do these processes. Employee turnover, I want it to be no more than 10% per year. What do I need to do to make that happen? Staff training, reporting. So you're putting in all of your annual priorities, or the manager is, or even the employee is. Even frontline employees could have goals for the year. I think it's very satisfying and they're learning. So then you take all of these annual priorities and you put them into quarterly priorities. So this is what I'm going to achieve Q1, Q2, Q3. And then as I'm filling this out, I save it back to TouchStone. And if I've worked on this in Q1 and then I want to go back and work on it for Q2, all I do is go back here to the form that I first started working on at the beginning of the year. And I click it. And so now I go back and edit it and change it, add more to Q1 or Q2, and then I save it again. So I'm accessing the same form over and over again until we get to the end of the year and it's done. Then maybe then I take this form and then do another one for 2025. Managers can go, again, to loop back to the process assignment and assign it to their employees to complete. Fill out your annual goals, fill out your quarterly goals, assign that process to the employee. They get it, they fill it out, and it all gets saved back to TouchStone. So I'll just end with this. The dashboard functionality, if you use it to any degree, is really going to help with this idea of getting your employees to use processes. At the end of the day, the managers are the ones that either make or break this. So the managers make it successful or not. If you don't have the support of your managers to get all the people underneath them to be using processes and focusing on them and innovating and making things better and not blaming each other, not blaming departments, but blaming the lack of a process. If you have any hope of making that work, these people here have to buy into this. Sometimes they buy in naturally because this is an amazing way to manage. I mean, it really is. If you try it at all, it's so much better than what most managers go through. But if they don't, then there has to be insistence. So if you want to have a process-dependent business where everyone is flourishing with the use of processes and you're creating a game worth playing, you have to insist that this work is done. In even some of the best situations where I've seen business owners push their managers or insist, and then over and over again until they finally comply, not long later, the manager comes back and says, boy, this is the best thing that ever happened to me. Sometimes you get really curmudgeon type people who just don't want to do it and either decide to live with that or don't. But letting that stop you from implementing it throughout the whole company, that one person or that one department, don't let that happen. So thank you for coming, everybody. I enjoyed being with you. Just as an aside, here, if you go to the Resource Center, and then you go down here to webinars and learn more, all of the trainings that you have just witnessed or gone through, this one's not uploaded yet, but the trainings have been uploaded here. So if you want to go back later and revisit something, or you want to have, another team member look at them, you can go at any time and view all of the trainings here in this section of the Resource Center.